Good evening and welcome to the Westborough Select Board meeting called here on Tuesday, November 15th, being slightly after 5:30. I am calling the meeting to order. I would ask all those that are willing and able to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So thank you for being here. We have a few things on our agenda for this specially called meeting tonight. I just want to kick it off. I was reached out by an individual about not having open forum on the meeting tonight and a request to speak in regard to the agenda for this evening. I just did want to note that, and we'll go through this in a minute on the first agenda item, but that what we're doing tonight is a requirement that has been brought to us because of the petition on state law to basically schedule a special town meeting as required under that state law. Our plan for this evening is not to, as a board, have a discussion or debate. We have a meeting next week, and we'll talk about tonight setting the agenda for that. So I thank folks for coming in here. Our intention tonight is not to have a full-on discussion on that. I did get the request from, as I mentioned, an individual to speak, and I am allowing him to speak. But in line with that, if there are comments that folks want to make tonight, but again, just to reiterate that we are not, as a board tonight, discussing or debating. Our meeting next week will be when we will vote on each of the warrant articles, but basically the support of the board or non-support of the board for those articles, as we typically do with town meetings. So just wanted to kick that off and hopefully make that clear for folks. So the first, thank you. Sorry, I should have kicked off with this. I just wanted to also note for this meeting that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded by Westborough TV, and just want to make folks aware of that. That is, as always, also noted at the bottom of our agenda. Thank you to my vice chair for that. So anyways, the first item on our agenda this evening is a petition request to schedule a special town meeting pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 10. I will kick it off and then turn to you, Christy. But basically, on November 7th, the town received a citizen petition containing over 500 signatures seeking a special town meeting to act on two petition articles related to the library building project. Upon certification by the town clerk, board of voter registrars, that the petition contains 200 valid signatures, the select board is required to call the special town meeting within 45 days of receipt of the request per Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 10, that I highlighted earlier. Other than the 45-day limit, the board has full discretion to choose the date and time of the meeting. Additionally, the board has authority to add in articles of its own choosing if it desires to do so, and we will be discussing a couple of additional articles that we're looking to add on this evening. So tonight, the board will need to set a special town meeting date, and we will be considering information that's been provided to us in emails, notably one from the finance director regarding the timing of the special town meeting relative to the town's ability to set the tax rate. And just to be clear for everybody, I think folks know at our next meeting, November 22nd, as we've been talking about for a while, that's when we will be having our tax classification hearing, so that will still be going, but the official setting of the actual tax rate cannot happen until after town meeting. Basically, by the law, we cannot set the tax rate if we have an open town meeting in process. So for us, in order to allow for, well, some people may not want it, but for us to keep the town running and allow for us to print tax bills and get them out to taxpayers for the next tax payment date, which is February 1st. We really need to have that done by December 15th. So that will be part of our discussion as we set a date this evening. Additionally, we have been working with the schools, notably the high school, to figure out availability that they have for use of the high school auditorium and gym. We have been working as well with our vendor for electronic voting to check on the availability and cost of electronic voting devices, and we'll talk about that this evening as well. So with that, I'll turn it to Christy just for the anything further on that as we go through the discussion.
Yep, so in looking at different dates that are available, we also have to consider that one of the articles that was on the petition is a zoning article, and it does actually require another hearing before the planning board. And so given the requirement to publicize or advertise the hearing, the earliest that the planning board would be able to have that meeting would be December 5th. They have a meeting scheduled December 6th, so they'll likely incorporate it into that December 6th meeting. Kim has worked with the school, as you mentioned, and the 7th, 8th, and 10th are available.
And just for folks' clarity, the 7th is a Wednesday, the 8th is a Thursday, so those would be night meetings. The 10th is a Saturday.
Right.
Okay. So steps here, what? Work on setting it.
Yeah, so the OTI, which is the vendor for the electronic voting devices, they're available after November 29th. The planning board sort of pushes us to that December 7th date at the earliest, and then we would need to keep it before the 15th, so really between the 7th and the 14th, understanding that even the 14th would be very late to set the tax rate. So that's why we would be looking at that 7th, 8th, or 10th, because the 9th, which is a Friday, is not available. The school is not available.
Okay. So I will open up to the board for discussions on date and timing.
So can I ask a question first?
Sure.
I know you read what the Mass General Law is. Just can we get confirmation that at least 200 signatures were certified and what the date was of that certification?
They were certified. We have
This weekend.
Monday.
we have
Wendy's
notice
here,
from
yeah.
the town clerk.
I'm just trying to understand when the clock starts for us as well. Just
When we received the petition.
even though they weren't certified at that time.
Right.
So that date was actually the 7th.
Right.
November
So I think
7th.
it's December 22nd is 45 days, I
Okay,
believe.
thank you. All right, and we have received certification of all those signatures?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
Okay,
They were certified at the end of
yep, I
last
just.
week. Yep.
didn't-
Sorry.
Nope, thank you. Yep,
Yep. After our packets were printed, but
Yep.
they did get certified, yes.
okay. Okay, so just, Ian, to your question, I did note that there is, I think no matter any day, any time, there are always going to be conflicts. In preparation for this meeting, I did note that there is, I believe, a Gibbons Middle School concert on December 7th, so I just put that out there. And there is I believe, band concert on the 13th and a school committee meeting on the 14th of the dates we're talking about. And December 10th is the Women's Club house tour, of which they're selling tickets. And that process, as the board has received an email, has been in process for many, many months. And that event is from 12 to 4 on the 10th. So I'll just share that with the board in case you weren't aware of those dates.
Thank you for bringing that up as well, Shelby. Other thoughts or, I've received, just throw it because I've received comments from a few people that a note that requests that we do it on a Saturday. The request of that came because of seniors and their inability to be able to, many of them drive in the evenings. So their request, again, if we so choose, but their desire would be to see us call it during that Saturday. We could do it during the day.
I would also add that in looking back at this most recent fall town meeting, although the meeting time was convened at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, excuse me, the discussion on the first article actually happened at 40 minutes later. So by the time I got through, obviously, the important elements of the moderator, our town manager spoke all very relevant information. We wouldn't have that, but that was additional time that, kind of took up. So I would imagine we wouldn't have that. We would be able to just kind of jump right into it. So even, I bring that up, that if we choose to have an evening meeting and we were to start it on a weeknight and start it, let's say, at 6, then, by the time we get through those elements, we would probably be into things easily by 6:30.
Okay. Patrick?
Yeah, I guess I have a couple of questions. First of all, do we know if there's any additional cost for hosting it on a Saturday, just being a weekend for overtime, that type of thing for the vendor? Is it more expensive for the town to do it on a Saturday?
The vendors provided us a quote. You mean for the electronic
Yes.
devices? So the vendors provided us a quote, which was
Not cheap.
no. It's based on the number of devices that we would anticipate. So we did get a quote for 2,000 devices, and it was $28,000.
And that doesn't matter what day of the week it is that happens?
No, it doesn't matter.
Okay. And then
They do need, sorry, one thing I didn't mention is that they do need 10 days notice, so.
Okay. And then the other question I had was in regards to the letter that Leah sent to us. One of the things that was just a little bit of a concern was we have a new vendor for printing the bills, it sounds like, and obviously time is very thin here between all of these things that we've outlined. I'm just wondering what the concern of risk is here, dealing with the new vendor and that timeline. Initially, when I read that, I thought it would be better to have it as early as possible in the week. Obviously, hearing that the planning board has to meet on that earlier changes that.
Right.
So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, the earlier the better in terms of setting the tax rate. We'd actually initially, before we knew that the hearing would be required to take place again, we had reached out to the school requesting that information about that first weekend in December, which would be preferred, but that it actually wasn't even available for that time. And now that we have to work off the timeline related to the hearing, and gets us to that 7th. The December 7th date, but the earlier the better. The more time that we have with the vendor and creation of the tax bills, the better.
Okay, and then also a question about the town employees that are required to run the meeting. Is there any anticipated additional difference in cost between running a weeknight meeting versus a Saturday morning meeting?
No.
Okay.
Not for the, well, the department heads are required by charter to attend the town meeting. There's no additional cost for them to attend the town meeting. I don't know if there would be an additional cost for the individual who helps with the AV at the high school or the custodians.
Okay. Thank you.
Alan, questions, comments?
Sort of looking at trying to squeeze this into a timeline, we're expecting the planning board to meet on December 6th for the public hearing.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess I would be comfortable with Thursday the 8th or Saturday the 10th, knowing that there's something in the afternoon on Saturday starting at 9 a.m., as we did with the annual town meeting. That seemed to work out well as far as babysitting accommodations, people able to attend for that first session of the meeting. Well, I expect there'll be significant discussion on at least one of the articles on the warrant. Even our longest article discussions tend to only run, on the outside 90 minutes, even if it goes 2 hours. I think we would still wrap up in plenty of time for people to participate in the house tour. in the afternoon and not interfere with that is a community event. I have a slight preference for the 10th in that it gives us some additional time to close the warrant. Knowing that we have to close the warrant 14 days in advance is knowing that we're still waiting to hear about state ARPA funding. For me, having as much information for the folks who are participating in the decision as possible is beneficial. I'd be interested in giving as much time, whatever mechanism we have, to get that information from the state, as it could impact, whether they support the project in its current form or not. It would give people additional information as far as the cost of the project to the town on which to make their decision.
Sean, any comments, or were you set?
Yeah, I mean, my only question, it's really not about right now we're discussing when we're scheduling the meeting. When we go to talk about opening, closing the warrant, I'll have additional comments.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, I look at this, I think, Shelby mentioned that the 7th, there was a conflict with Gibbons. I think it makes sense to avoid that date. So it's really between Thursday the 8th or the morning of Saturday, the 10th. I am fine with either, whichever works for folks. I think we've also heard from people that, we've heard some preferences towards Saturday, whether or not we want to take that into consideration. But, yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable with either day.
Shelby?
So I'm certainly open to either the 8th or the 10th. If we were to go on the 10th, I mean, Alan maybe said this and I missed it, that we should absolutely start at 9,
Yes.
not later than
Yes.
that.
Absolutely.
And just for the board's benefit, I will not be available on the 10th. I already have plans. And I will be out of town. But I'm only one person, so it's really irrelevant, but I want the board to know that.
And Ian, if I may?
Yep.
I'll just say I have no strong preference of the 8th or the 10th either. I guess my only concern is in regards, again, back to Leah's email in regards to the new vendor and providing as much time to avoid the risk of those bills getting out on time. I'm thinking that a few extra days there might be beneficial. But I totally get what Alan's saying as well in regards to the ARPA funding. And there's certainly some advantage, although last we talked, it didn't seem like there was too much optimism that the governor was going to release that funding. Maybe that'll change. Just some general thoughts there.
Yeah, and I hear that, and I do understand where our finance team's coming from. I guess I look at it, if it's the 8th, it's really a day. I know, because the weekend, so maybe it's a few days, but I guess my personal take, if to choose between those, I think to allow for participation, that was one of the assuming complaints that we got, or did get, I shouldn't say assuming, that we did get from folks, was timing and vote being late at night. To me, I think the better solution would be the 10th, in the morning of the 10th, from my take. But
Would you like a motion?
sure, please.
Will you pull up the legal wording here?
Oh, I got it here.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, my question to Ian is.
Yeah,
you
no, it's a
mentioned
good point.
comments,
So-
and so
Mr. Budaleri, do you want to speak at this point before we call the meeting? I mean, as folks know, we're required to call this meeting, but you did reach out, so,
okay, thank you.
yep, thank you for that.
Hi, Steve Budaleri, 9 Collins Newton Drive. And I want to thank the board for allowing me to speak in regard to the petition to call a special town meeting, one with the sole intent to conduct a revote on Article 15 from the October 17th town meeting. As you know, the article failed to gain the two-thirds necessary to pass. MGL Chapter 39, Section 10 is being used by proponents as the means to call a special town meeting for a revote. I read that section of the law, and it appears that it is technically legal to do this. However, it also appears that the original intent of this Mass statute was to provide a way for a group of citizens to bring forward an issue that had not previously been addressed and is now in need of a timely and off-cycle town meeting to take necessary action. Related to this, it is unclear that this statute was ever envisioned to provide a means to allow for a revote for a single article previously taken up at a recently held town meeting, particularly when there are no meaningful changes of circumstance. Has anything changed since October 17th? In summary, the statute was intended for purposeful citizen-initiated actions, not town meeting, quote, do-overs. The people who were disappointed in the outcome of the vote of Article 15 have cited well-understood conditions inherent in our town meeting form of government, namely that only those who actually attend can participate. Conversely, if you didn't attend, then your voice was not heard. Then the question becomes one of fairness. Independent of individual circumstances, is being unable to attend a given town meeting unfair? If the first vote on Article 15 at the October 17th town meeting wasn't fair to everyone, then how would a second vote at a subsequent town meeting be fair to everyone? Regardless of when a town meeting is scheduled, won't there always be people for whom it won't be possible to attend? How can true fairness ever be achieved? While I recognize that currently this might not be possible, I'll share it anyway for the benefit of those who are either here or listening in. The only true fair way to allow all voices to be heard would be to put it on a ballot so that all registered voters can go vote their preference. Why not vote on all major spending articles that way? Right now, I don't think it's allowed that we can, but it doesn't mean it can't change. Also, you know, we have a substantial number of signatures on a petition that opposes a special town meeting for the purpose of just a revote. Therefore, given all the set of circumstances that we have, if the town goes forward with a subsequent single-issue town meeting, it's likely to be very acrimonious and divisive, independent of the outcome of any vote. It would also further call into question the viability of our town meeting form of government. Many people chose to spend long amounts of time at the recent two-day town meeting. How will they feel about doing this in the future once they experience an episode whereby an issue decided at one meeting gets changed at another? What will that mean for the future of Westborough's town meeting form of government? It appears to me that the set of circumstances we currently face could perhaps, perhaps should spell the beginning of the end for our town meeting form of government. With a population of over 20,000 residents, perhaps it's time that Westborough needs a form of government which makes it easier for all voices to be heard, a form of government that is fair to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buglari. And thank you for some of your comments. And I think some of them at the beginning were questions that we, as a board, asked as well, and of our town council as to, you know, the interpretation of the law. I think you hit it the same way that our council came back, and basically, and this is from Brian Riley at KP Law, town council, said that, yes, there's a statutorily recognized petition which requires the select board to call a special town meeting. But in a binding sense, there's no such thing as the petition against holding it, which is one of the questions, I think, in the petition you had there, but I do think that demonstrates opposition to calling the town meeting. Unfortunately for us as a board, the petition that's in front of us through that process was validated, and we are required by the law to acknowledge that petition and call this meeting, which is what we're doing tonight. But definitely appreciate your comments and speaking tonight, and for reaching out and requesting that. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, our plan here tonight is not to have this be open forum related to this. I know we have a lot of people here. I would encourage folks to come to our meeting. We'll talk about this later, but come to our meeting next week where we'll be discussing this as a kind of discussion and vote of support from the board. Again, that is not binding. It's just what, as folks know, will go into the finance committee's booklet, but it will be a vote that we take on all articles as a board. And we'll be putting that on the agenda for our next meeting. And the other thing is to attend town meeting when we decide here what the date and time would that be, and encourage folks to come. And as we know, that really is the time for everyone to hear it, because they'll be there to vote on it too. So, yeah. Is there, somebody's just raised to me that because we had an opponent there, is anybody here as a proponent that wishes to speak on the article? Yes.
Hi, thank you. Brittany Jacobs, 9 Brookway. I'm just here to say thank you on behalf of the over 500 Westborough residents who signed the citizens petition for a more accessible and inclusive vote on the library project. We recognize that this has required time and work on by the select board and the town staff, including the town clerk, town manager, town moderator, and administrative and support staff, in addition to the already busy daily task load. We appreciate the timeliness of certifying the required 200 signatories as Westborough registered voters, particularly during the busy midterm elections this past week. And we thank you for the time and work in order to schedule and hold the special town meeting.
Thank you. You have a question, or? The plan now tonight is not to speak. I would ask that, if you don't mind, to hold that, if you can attend next.
I'll leave.
You don't have to leave, but
Well, are you telling me not to leave?
no,
Have a good evening.
I'm not. Okay.
Can Mr. Biglieri provide a copy of the petition, so we have it just in the record that it was received? Even
If
though
he
it
wants
doesn't,
to,
even though
yeah.
it's not legally binding?
Those signatures, if you want to make a copy of those and share those with us, if you want. Feel free to, as part of the record, if that.
Yeah, we'd like to.
Okay.
All of our signatures,
Yeah, the signatures that you,
or just the petition?
the signatures.
Okay, I'll have to provide them at another time.
Yeah.
That's fine. No.
Okay, just,
But if you want to, I mean, no requirement to do that. It's just a request that came. And
if you want it as part of the record, that's
We'd
fine.
like to.
perfect. Thank you. And apologies to that comment. I mean, I think this really, the meeting tonight is really just to set the agenda. As I said, discussion will happen. Our next meeting's discussion will happen at special town meeting. So I do appreciate folks abiding by that as well. And I did, the reason Mr. Budaleri had reached out, had pointed out that we did not put open forum on the meeting tonight and had requested it, and I appreciated that, and I recognized him to speak tonight, and that's why that was allowed. So let's go back to where we stand with a motion for calling the special town meeting.
So I move to call a special town meeting at 9 a.m. on December 10th, 2022, as required under Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 10, following receipt of a petition on November 7th, 2022, which the town clerk has certified as containing the signatures of 200 registered voters.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on that? And Shelby, I acknowledge you not being there.
I'm sure there are other folks.
Well, we
who
might not,
can't. It's okay.
it may not vote in
No, no,
favor, but,
it's okay.
okay, all those in favor? Okay, so it's 5-0, 5 being present, so the meeting has been called at 9 a.m. on Saturday, December 10th. Okay. Next on our agenda is discussion of 0 Ruggles Street
Wait.
warrant. Oops.
Before we have to decide if we want to place articles on the warrant and close it today,
I think we have a couple, yep, go ahead.
so I'd ask that we not close the warrant today with the potential of adding an additional warrant article. The reason being is knowing that, while the chances are slim, the fact that there still is a chance that the town could receive $13 million in funds, which would bring us back to the 2019 cost to the town, and that might impact people's decisions. I'm, interested in doing what we can. I've heard that the state is planning or was required, unsure which, to disclose the next round of ARPA funding by the end of the calendar year. We're trying to confirm but have been unable to, whether that's actually the case. But we might hear it. But if it turns out that we are expecting to hear for the ARPA funds, then I would be interested in adding an article to the warrant that would change the funding mechanism for the library project to be a debt exclusion. That would require a special town election that could be held the first week of January to meet the January 9th deadline, at which point in time we would know, if we believe we'd know that we'd have the $13 million in funding or not, that could be a consideration for the voters on this, and it would put it to the townwide vote. So at this point, however, we don't know if the announcement or the allocations of ARPA funds are going to be made. So I guess I'm asking for more time to understand if that's going to happen and if that's information we feel would be relevant to the residents in making a decision on the project. And closing the warrant at our December 22nd meeting still meets the 14-day deadline.
Yeah, I just want to check on
The
that.
10th.
It's 14 calendar days deadline, or,
14 calendar days.
Yeah.
okay, so holidays.
I know I'm throwing a wrench in the works, but
So, Alan, I'm sorry, so between now and next week, we find this out. Let's say it happens. Then, at this special town meeting, we still require a 2/3 vote on Article 1, and then you're saying on top of that, you would like to have,
so between now and our meeting on the 22nd, 1 week from tonight, if we learn that we're receiving the $13 million in ARPA funds, I think the warrant's fine as it is. The residents know that we're getting that money. It changes the cost, it reduces the cost to the town by $13 million. They will consider that in their vote. If we don't get confirmation of receipt of the ARPA funds, but are advised that we will hear by the end of the year, then the only mechanism to effectively have a final decision on the project, when we would know that information, would be to have a townwide vote after the first of the year, or after December 31st, which would, and the only mechanism to do that would be to change the funding mechanism to a debt exclusion. And so I don't, and if we hear back that there's no guarantee of a decision by December 31st, then I would leave it as is, because I wouldn't want to necessarily incur the cost and effort involved in having a special town election the first week in January. But if we hear, or if we believe we're going to hear by the end of the year, I'd like to have that part of the consideration for the voters. And it just means waiting 1 week to close the warrant.
Yeah, I think just because this is new, I'm not sure that I want to have the board debate this tonight, because I think we
Well-
think about it some more, but the debate is really closing, the warrant tonight or not. I guess I'm looking to Christie first, I think we've confirmed the 20, we could wait till the 22nd to close the warrant and set that. That doesn't impact anything with the planning board's need to call a meeting or anything. No
Right,
impacts that we
'cause
can.
Your vote was to schedule it for that date and time, so.
Okay. Shelby, you've,
No, no, I'm all set.
I think as long as we just continue our discussion and finalize what we believe will be for certain on the ballot,
Tonight.
and then we can just close the warrant next week, I think that's fine, another week to, if anything else comes up. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'll hold my questions on what Alan's proposing until we have a discussion. And it doesn't sound like it's going to impact our timeline, so I'm fine with it.
yeah, and that'd be my request, just because we don't have that as a discussion agenda. I don't think it's
Yep.
fair to talk about
Yeah.
tonight. And
Not a problem.
Yeah, I would just
Give me
ask,
time to see what he's actually proposing.
yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah.
obviously, you'll put something in our packet for next week, kind of outlining the,
Right.
if that, then therefore, and why.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
thanks.
Or next week, it'll either be
No, I know.
there's a need or an ability or justification to rethink the funding mechanism to put it to a townwide vote, or there's not. If there is, we'd have it for everyone to review ahead of time. If not, we can continue as.
Yeah,
Appreciate
as
your
currently
thoughtful
drafted.
consideration of all the options. I
Just
really-
Yeah.
just a quick point of order question, though. My understanding is if you've changed the funding mechanism, it requires not only a 50-50 vote on a ballot, but also a 50-50 vote at town meeting. So
it's a 2/3
It would
vote.
still be 2/3.
if you change the funding, though, I thought it was
Right.
50-50 both.
There would still be a borrow.
It'll still be a borrow, so it's still
It's still
required
a borrow.
2/3.
2/3 at town meeting and a 50, a majority, simple majority and a vote?
I thought it was 2/3.
Yeah,
for debt
that I don't
exclusion.
know, I'd have to look.
I think this is where I want it.
Yeah.
Instead of
That's fine.
debating
I
it
just-
now, I think right now is,
I don't know if it's I don't know if,
I think there's a lot of questions then.
yeah, I just,
Yeah,
The other one has to be open.
yeah, we have to leave one open, so
Yes.
that's not open.
Thank you.
So just so folks know, because it's an open meeting, we can't close the doors and have people see closed doors and think that we're not having an open meeting,
For
so
sound, we need to.
we need to have one of these doors open. Just to explain what we closed this one because there was discussions going on downstairs. So, yeah, I think there's a number of questions so really the question is, are folks okay with us not closing the warrant tonight to find out more information on this? And
Yeah, I mean, if there's no impact to the planning board hearing and anything else, I'm fine to keep it open.
okay.
Do we need to make a motion to put Articles 1 through 4 on the warrant tonight, or do you want to hold until we actually do the closure next week?
I don't think it matters. We can
Okay.
do it next week. I do, to Sean's point, though, I'd like to, since we have it on the agenda, I would like to talk about the other articles. So,
yep.
okay, so we will hold off on closing the warrant tonight, but let's go through, so, agenda item 3, the discussion of 0 Ruggles Street, warrant article to convey parcel A to the Conservation Commission. I'm sure folks may be confused on this one, but I'll turn to Christie to give us the explanation of what's going on here.
Sure. Excuse me. So as we had mentioned at your previous meeting, following the October town meeting, we received an email from the state stating that they had a unique ability to be flexible in terms of how, in terms of the grant that we were awarded for 0 Ruggles. Initially, we had been told that any division of the property would make the town ineligible for the grant, but we had discussed it at a meeting and decided to move forward with dividing the property into those 3 parcels. So parcel A, which is closest to Breen Road, 0.3 acres, parcel B, the largest parcel, about 10 acres in the middle, and then parcel C at the sort of top of the hill where the water tower is. At the October town meeting, the board recommended and it was approved that parcels A and B would stay under the care and control of the select board.
A and C, sorry.
A and C, thank you, under the care and control of the select board, which would allow some flexibility for DPW in the future in case they had needs related to the water tower. And then we had also talked about the creation of a small parking lot on parcel A. And then parcel B, which was the 10 acres, was voted to be conveyed to the Conservation Commission. So as I mentioned, following that meeting, the state had stated that they had some flexibility, and so there were a couple different caveats that we were able to work through, but one of them was that parcel A would need to be conveyed to the Conservation Commission, protected under Article 97. And town council weighed in that we would be required to have an additional town meeting vote based on the wording of the motion in October. So with this meeting coming up, we have an article that we're proposing to convey that parcel A upon closing on the property to the Conservation Commission. So we have worked with town council as well as the state, and they have said that land clearing, grading, tree removal, as an example, for purposes of a small parking lot to accommodate passive recreation at the broader property is permitted on parcel A. So we would be able to move forward with what we had discussed at some point in the future, even if it were to be conveyed to the Conservation Commission, protected under Article 97.
And just for the public's, because they voted a large amount, but what's the grant amount that we'd be able to receive, which then would be basically lowering the
Sure.
amount the town would pull out of its reserve funds?
So the town meeting had voted I think $334,000, which was inclusive of $12,000 for the survey. The actual purchase price was $325,000. The revised grant amount for property acquisition is $60,900. So we would reduce that $325,000 by $60,900, and then some nominal grant money for recording fees and title certification.
Great. So it's really in the benefit, putting this through is really in the benefit of the town of really taking the grant that came from the state, allowing it to offset some of the purchase price and move forward, so.
And we, to Christie's point, we still protect the ability to have a small, kind of, I'll call it
Trailhead type
natural
area,
trailhead type parking
Yeah.
area. Yep.
Not
We can still
paved,
do what
nothing,
we
just
planned.
kind of what we had planned anyways.
Yep.
Great. Any questions on that one, or? Okay, great. Moving forward to item 4, discussion of free cash transfer requests to fund electronic voting.
Yeah. So this request is actually to fund the annual town meeting. We spent about $20,000 for the October town meeting, which was the total of the amount included in the town clerk's budget for electronic voting. We haven't used electronic voting in a long time, and so obviously the prices have gone up. So this would be free cash for $30,000 to cover the upcoming annual town meeting. I know that Wendy has already reached out to the Finance Committee, as have I, about the possible need for a reserve fund transfer for this upcoming special town meeting. We've also talked about the possibility of doing a secret ballot as opposed to the electronic voting. I don't know how the board would feel about that. But if we were to move forward with the electronic voting, we would go to the AFC for that money. So the $30,000 would be for annual town meeting.
Right, really to replenish, the budget's already been spent.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions on that one? I guess one question would, is going to the AFC sounds like the right thing because this is a special request for this newly called town meeting, but would there be thought of putting it through in this article for a free cash transfer?
Probably what we would do would be we would replenish the reserve fund. We could add an article to replenish the reserve fund.
Okay. I don't know that we need to, but.
Yeah.
Okay, just a question. But right now, it's been planned for a request from the AFC for a transfer.
We've reached out to them, yeah.
Okay.
And then there's a fifth article that we were proposing, as the board's aware, the town was party to the opioid lawsuit settlement agreements. And to date, since the October town meeting, we had received a small amount prior to, but since the October town meeting, we've received even more money related to the opioid settlement, so $224,000 at this point. As you know, that's subject to very prescriptive sort of spending requirements. However, initially they had asked that the state to make some changes to, they'd asked to make some changes to some municipal finance laws so that we could set aside that money. That didn't happen. So now that money would be closed out to free cash. However, we're still bound by the settlement agreement to use very prescriptive strategies to spend that money. And so this request would be to appropriate that $224,199.85 out of free cash so we could put it into an article so that we can account for it and make sure we're spending it according to the agreements. The reason that we're asking that this be put on at this time as opposed to waiting until the annual town meeting is because the opportunity has presented itself, and we know that there are other communities that are talking about some regional work, pooling opioid money, and so we want to be able to spend the money, which we can't do without appropriation.
Perfect, makes sense.
Just to be clear, so we have to move it into free cash?
It would close out to free.
It would close out to free cash, but it will be tracked uniquely because of its use.
Right. So it would either close out to free cash and then we would track it separately, or what we're proposing is that we would appropriate it into this article so that we can track it.
So it comes out of free cash. This is taking it out of free cash.
Right.
This article takes it out of free cash.
And just puts it, so it would be held in an article.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, thank
No,
you.
that's
All right,
Yep.
thanks.
So I think it does what you're at, so it allows us not to have to track it
Right.
as a separate part of free
Right.
cash. We're moving it out as it should be,
Yep, thank
segregated.
you.
Yeah.
Okay,
I just want to thank, the fact that we've participated in receiving funds in the opioid settlement. This is one of those town functions that doesn't make the front page of your Facebook feed. But I want to thank town manager's office and the staff who've been involved in the planning and the response. Town council's been involved in this as well. That facilitated us being part of the settlement and obtaining these funds. So it's one of the behind the scenes ways that the town works. And so I want to recognize and
Thanks.
appreciate the effort.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think, kudos to the board for supporting that work.
Yep.
So-
thanks. Okay, so article, items 5 and 6 on the agenda will pass over because we talked about earlier, so we're not placing articles on the warrant, we're not closing the warrant tonight. So the last thing then on our agenda is the vote to authorize the town manager to enter into a successor municipal energy agreement. So, Kim, are you gonna,
I am.
okay.
So as the board may be aware, the town's our electricity accounts for town facilities, for town hall, our pump stations, all of our town accounts are through a municipal aggregation program with the MMA, Mun Energy, and Constellation Energy. This is something the town has participated in for a number of contracts now, and the current 3-year contract will end in June of 2023. I think as we're all aware, the market right now, we're seeing significant increases. And this is actually, the finance director is involved with the team at Constellation. They start tracking the market months and months ahead of our contract renewal. And while we would typically start looking closely at rates and watching rates to lock in the spring, they're advising that we consider potentially locking in earlier than we would than we have in previous years. So the contract offers fixed rate guaranteed pricing in a multi-year contract. So what we're really asking for is if the pricing at the recommendation of Constellation and with the finance director's involvement, if we have what we believe is favorable pricing, that you authorize the town manager to lock into our next agreement. We are anticipating significant increases. Our current 3-year contract is at 8.49 cents a kilowatt hour. And we're not going to see
getting that.
anything close to that.
We're currently budgeting about a 30% increase.
Yeah.
Crazy.
This is one of those things, if we had a crystal ball, it'd be great, but we don't, so we really have to rely on the extensive market research and the economists that back the Constellation folks. And again, what this contract affords is stability. Once we lock in, we know what our rate is for the next 3 years. Or there are options. We've typically gone with the 3-year contract cycle because that's typically where you get the most favorable option.
Great.
Kim, when is our 3 years up? I'm sorry.
June of 2023.
So it's coming June.
Yeah.
Their concern right now is that energy rates in the spring may not be, they may be higher than what we're seeing now.
Okay.
And so would that, you're looking for an authorization to enter into a favorable contract. Would we see what those rates are ultimately to vote, or we're just giving you the authorization?
So we're asking for the
Something
authorization.
less than 30%?
We're just asking for the authorization because it changes daily.
Yes, no, I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
As part of that contract negotiation.
And again, this is not the town's aggregation, this is the
Correct.
municipal
Municipal
aggregation,
Right.
municipal side.
With the rate lock-in, does that start the new term of the contract earlier, or would the contract still start July 1st?
We would still start at the end of the current contract.
Okay. So we won't see a rate increase until
Correct.
June 30th.
When it goes the
11/59,
other ways,
59.
sometimes it's favorable to do what they call the blend and extend. We wouldn't want to do that. We want to hang on to the pricing we have now as long as we can.
Great. John, I saw you raise your hand.
It's unrelated to this, but before you adjourn, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay,
Um,
but nothing about any
It's not
vote?
about the electric.
Okay,
Do you want a motion?
yes, please.
So I don't think we have one in
No,
our packet,
you
or I
don't.
can't see it. So I move to authorize the town manager and assistant town manager to execute a contract for the municipal aggregation for municipal electricity in advance of our,
Constellation New Energy Agreement.
the Constellation Energy Agreement in advance of, for our 7/123 contract.
Seconded.
Okay, any comments, questions?
That was the most eloquent motion, but if it gets it done.
That's scary times, but hopefully we get something somewhat better. Okay, all those in favor? It's 5-0, 5 being present. That is everything, I think, on our agenda. John's coming forward. Anything that I've missed here on the board? Okay.
Yeah, just.
Mr. Moderator, you're
Yeah,
on.
thank you. John Arnold, 251 West Main Street, Town Moderator. Not to play worst-case scenario boy here, but while you were discussing the town meeting, and since we already have enough angst and concern about the town meeting, today's weather reminded me we should think about what happens if it snows on December 10th. If it snows and the roads are deemed impassable, or it will be my obligation to consult with you and public safety officials to find out when we would reschedule the town meeting. Since there's already been lots of discussion about that, I just wanted to ask if before your meeting next Tuesday, if we could connect with the schools, maybe talk to the police to see would we be willing to have it on Sunday afternoon? Or would we want to try Monday night? What are the Monday conflicts, just to try to get it done with? So again, perfect. Whenever you said it, I hope it happens. But I realize when the weather shifted from 70s down to 30s in tonight's weather, I don't want anyone caught by surprise if everybody says, okay, Saturday morning, we get some weird blizzard. And then it's like, well, are people going to be offended if we have it Sunday afternoon, or is the school even available? So I'd just like to think through the options, so if any of us are in that position, we've thought through.
Yeah, hopefully we're not, but I appreciate bringing that up. Actually, John, while you're there, can I just,
Sure.
because you were up,
Yep.
Christy did mention, I know you and the town clerk have looked into the, and we got the pricing on the electronic voting, but there's also discussion of secret ballot. Any preferences from your?
My preferences lie with the voters, and it's a really tough trade-off. I think the voters love the speed of the electronic voting, but there's no reason why you can't hand out paper slips and have people write yes or no on them. It would take time to count them, so it wouldn't be the instant gratification in like 30 seconds. We'd know what it was done, but it can be done either way, and there are well-known, tried-and-true methods for doing it. It's just a matter of, after Article 1, would people be willing to stick around and wait the 40 to 45 minutes or whatever it may take, depending on how many people show up. And I guess the other alternative is what we had set up for October, which was One of the reasons why the quote is so high is that we want to make sure we could accommodate everyone. In October, we only had the private network that the vendor sets up in the auditorium, and we had planned for only counting secret ballot votes in the overflow room. So that way it was not exactly half the cost, but it was much less. As you know, we ended up not needing it because we were able to squeeze the 600 or so people into the auditorium without people feeling too uncomfortable being close together. But the alternative is we get as many as we can, pay to only fit up one room, and then if there's an overflow room, we do electronic voting in one, and then there's fewer votes to count in the overflow room. That was our fallback position if we ended up having 1,200 people in October that we didn't need. So
Great.
But they're all fair and they're all doable.
Great, thank
It
you.
just comes down to if we think people will be patient enough to stick around and wait for a counted vote. Thanks.
If I can ask, do we as a board need to vote on, like, what method?
No.
Understanding?
No.
Okay.
It's either the meeting's vote, it's my decision to propose a method of voting, and then the voters by majority vote can change the method of voting.
No, but I guess what I'm getting to is we have to request that electronic voting is made available, and that's, as we heard
Well-
tonight, a pretty extensive cost to the town.
Well, you don't have to do that. We've done it in the past where essentially the town clerk has a budget and they're voting to have it. And so that money's been spent, so now it's a question of what we do. But I mean, it's never been the selectmen formally requesting electronic voting. That's been done between a discussion with me and the town clerk and the election and registration.
And it sounds like right now that the
But
request has been.
I'm always willing to hear what you're interested in, but it's never been a case that you don't order the electronic vote.
Right.
Just with the extension, the increased cost,
Right.
that's super increased that we're hearing tonight.
We still need the replenishment because we need it for annual town meeting.
Yes.
Right.
But this,
But this is over and above, right?
right, and that's why I was wondering, if it's not up to us, is there at least an opportunity for the board to state a position to give to the town moderator and town clerk?
That'd be great. Also, want to let you know, we are looking into alternative vendors that would reduce the cost. We just haven't had time
Oh, and
to
that's
check
right.
them all out yet, and I also don't think it would necessarily be a good meeting in which to have a first experimental vote with a new vendor. So, but we're looking into that, but yes.
On that thread, I would just also ask, if you're asking that question, also ask what it would cost to own our own system, because this is a constant year
No,
over year.
that's what one of the alternative vendors
Okay.
is. It's essentially, the town licenses the software but owns the handsets.
Okay.
But that's for another day.
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I think we can think about that and talk about that next meeting. It sounds like there's a reserve fund transfer, which would already come out of money that's already been appropriated, if it goes that way.
So she'll go to the AFC in advance.
Okay. Great. Motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Seconded?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you, folks, for being here tonight. And apologies to my fellow members and town staff that have to head to the master plan